An Acceptable Time by Madeleine L'Engle, Chapter 4. Polly spent several hours with Bishop Kalubra's Ogham notebook. In the late afternoon, her grandmother went swimming with her. Nothing happened. Anarel did not come. The evening passed quietly. On Tuesday, the bishop asked her over for tea. "Go along," her grandmother said. "I know you're going stir-crazy here. And even though I don't think anything will happen while I'm with you, refusing to believe that 3,000 years ago can touch directly on our own time, I'm just as happy to have you away from the pool." "You don't need the car?" "I'm not going anywhere. Louise's house is no distance as the crow flies. Our land is contiguous with hers. But by car, you have to go down the main road, drive west a couple of miles, and then turn uphill to the right the first chance you get." The phone rang. Zachary, obviously wanting to talk. "Polly, I'm just so glad to be in touch with you again. You're like a bright light these filthy days. Autumn seems pretty glorious to me. Not in an office as a small box with no windows. I can't wait to see you. I'm looking forward to it too. Polly, I don't want to hurt you." Her grandmother had left the kitchen and gone out to the lab, leaving Polly alone with the phone. "Why should you hurt me?" "Polly, it's my pattern. I hurt every girl I get involved with. I hurt you last summer." "Not really," she protested. "I mean, it turned out all right. Because your friends came and rescued us after I'd upset that idiotic little canoe. But you're right. That was minor compared to..." He sounded so desperate that she asked gently, "Compared to what, Zach?" "Polly, I'm a self-protective bastard. All I think of is my own good." "Well, don't we all to some extent?" "To some extent, yes, but I take it beyond some extent." "Hey, are you at work?" "Yeah, but don't worry. I'm alone in my box, and things are slow today. I'm not goofing off. There's nothing for me to do right now. I just want to say I'm going to try really hard not to hurt you." "Well, okay, that's good. You don't believe me." "Sure, I believe you. You're not going to hurt me. No, what I mean is how self-serving I am. Listen. Once I was with a girl I really liked. Her grandfather was sick, dying really, and we went to the hospital to get blood for him. And she was upset, of course, really upset. And there was a little kid she knew there, and the little kid was having a seizure. Well, Polly, the thing is, I really don't know what happened because I ran out on it." "What?" She kept her voice gentle. "I ran away. I couldn't take it. I got in my car and drove off. I just left her. That's the kind of putrid stinker I am." "Hey, Zach, don't put yourself down. That's in the past. You wouldn't do it again." I don't know what I'd do. That's the point." "Listen, Zachary, don't get stuck in the past. Give yourself a chance. We do learn from our mistakes." "Do we? Do you really think so?" "Yes, I've made plenty and I've learned from them." "Good. Then all I wanted to say is I think you're terrific and I want us to have a good time on Thursday, and I don't want to do or say anything to hurt you." "We'll have a good time on Thursday," she promised. "Okay, then. Till Thursday. I'm glad you're on this earth, Polly. You're good for me. Goodbye." She was baffled by his call. What on earth was he afraid he would do that would hurt her? She shrugged, went out to the pantry, and took the red anorak off the hook. Knocked on the lab door. "Gran, can I help with anything before I go?" "Not a thing. Just be back in plenty of time for dinner. I'm sorry to be having an attack of mother henism, but I can't wipe out your experience of crossing a time threshold just because it's totally out of the context of my own experience. I keep asking myself, did it really happen? But, Grand, I think it did. Go have tea with Nays." Her grandmother's voice was slightly acid. "Perhaps he'll see fit to tell you more than he's told us." As Polly drove up the hill to Dr. Louise's yellow house, surrounded by maples and beeches dropping yellow leaves, the bishop came out to meet her, let her in, took the red anorak. Dr. Louise's kitchen was smaller than the Murrays and darker, but large enough for a sizable oak table by the window, and brightened by a surprising bouquet of yellow roses, as well as copper pots and pans. The bishop took something lopsided out of the oven. "Alex's bread making challenged me. This is supposed to be Irish soda bread, but I don't think it's a success." "It'll probably taste wonderful," Polly said, "and I'm hungry." The bishop put the bread out with butter, jam, and a pitcher of milk. "Tea, milk, or cocoa?" "Cocoa would be lovely. It's cold today. Perfect autumn weather, pushing 60. Sit down, be comfortable." Polly sat while the bishop puttered about, making 2 steaming mugs of cocoa, slicing the soda bread, which did indeed taste better than it looked, especially with homemade rosehip jelly. What happens to what's happened? Polly asked him. It's a big question, the bishop said. I seem to have found one time gate. There may be countless others. What was going on 3,000 years ago, she continued. Abraham and Sarah left home, the bishop said, and went into the wilderness. But there were already pharaohs in Egypt, and the Sphinx was asking her riddles. What else? Gilgamesh, the bishop continued. I think he was around then. But he wasn't from anywhere around here. Uruk, the bishop said, way on the other side of the world. And there was Sumerian people, and there was Sumerian poetry lamenting the death of Tammuz, the shepherd god. He sliced more bread. Tammuz's mother was the goddess Inini. Let me see, back in Egypt, that wasn't anywhere around here either. The Great Pyramid was built at Giza. The Cheops pyramid conforms in dimensions and layout to astronomical measurements, like Stonehenge, in astronomy, if not in architecture. The stars have taught us more than we realize, he was rambling on happily. I wonder what it would be like on a planet where the atmosphere was too dense for the stars to shine through. This bread isn't that bad after all. Bishop, please, Polly smoothed jam onto her bread. Maybe you've told my grandparents. But how did you meet Anarol and Karalis? When? It started last spring. The bishop folded his legs and made himself comfortable, a piece of bread and jelly in his hand. I'd never before been so unbusy in my life, and I was wandering around looking for odd jobs to do, and came across an old root cellar behind the barn where Louise parks her car. At least it was called a root cellar, and in the days when it was assumed that one could protect oneself from a nuclear attack, some of the old root cellars came into reuse as bomb shelters. Fat lot of help they'd be, Polly said. Louise never bothered with hers. She always said that when she retired, she'd have a garden and put it back to its original use, a storage place for tubers. But the thing is, some of the old root cellars were not built as root cellars. What then? They were dug centuries before the people we knew as the first settlers came over from England, and they were dug to be holy places, where the priests or druids or whoever they were could go to commune with the dead and with the gods of the underworld. They believed that those who had died were still available for advice and help, back for countless generations. Oh, I like that, Polly said. Did my grandparents have a root cellar? They used to, but when they put the pool in, it got dug up. So I had only Louise's to excavate, and I spent weeks on it with a trowel and a shovel, and there I found the first of the Ogham stones, the only one not on your grandparents' land. Over the years, the root cellar had filled in with leaves, loose dirt, other debris, and this had protected the stone. The writing on the first one was far clearer than those I found in the stone walls. What did it say? It was a memorial marker honoring our foremothers. A car door slammed outside and Dr. Louise came in, calling, Hello! I'm earlier than I thought I'd be. I hope there's tea left for me. Plenty, the bishop said. I made a large pot and Polly and I have been drinking cocoa instead. Dr. Louise shucked off her heavy jacket and then her white coat, both of which she hung on deer antlers to the side of the door. I inherited the antlers with the house. Polly laughed. You don't strike me as a hunter. Hardly, the doctor helped herself to bread and butter. Nays, you're really becoming domesticated in your old age. This isn't half bad. It looks better now than when I took it out of the oven. Bishop, Polly said softly, please go on. If I am right about root cellars, and of course I may not be, they were ancient time devices, a way the druids could commune with their past, with their gods, with powers of both good and evil, long lost to us. You might call the root cellar a 3,000-year-old time capsule. Have you been watching too much TV? Dr. Louise asked. It's probably affected my metaphors, her brother agreed. All spring the root cellar kept drawing me, but also sending me out. I found other Ogham stones in Alex and Kate's stone walls, worked on translating their hieroglyphics. Found 3 in a small can of stones near your star-watching rock, Polly. I knew there was something special about the star-watching rock, that it was a place of power, benign power. Polly said, it was always a special place to my mom and her sibs. Go on, please, Bishop. In late June, as the days lengthened toward the summer solstice, an early heat wave hit us, and the root cellar was cool, so I spent more time there. not digging anymore, just sitting, often moving beyond thought into the dark and timeless space of contemplation. I was afraid you were becoming a pagan, Dr. Louise remarked with irony. No, Louise, no, I was not then and am not now turning to the old gods. No, the God I have tried to serve all my life is still good enough for me. Christ didn't just appear as Jesus of Nazareth 2,000 years ago, don't forget. Christ is, will be, and certainly was at the time the Druids dug the root cellar 3,000 years ago, just as much as now. But we rational and civilized people have turned our backs on the dark side of God because we're afraid of the numerous and unexplainable. Forgive me, I'm preaching. I've spent so much of my life giving sermons that it's a habit I find hard to break. You're a good preacher, Dr. Louise said with sisterly pride. So please, Polly urged. Midsummer's Eve, the bishop continued. I was in the root cellar when I called it a 3,000-year-old time capsule. I was in a way joking. It's a metaphor that seems right. You see, what happened was that I was in the root cellar, and then, without transition, I was on the star-watching rock, and there was Anarel. And that first time we couldn't understand each other except by gestures. I jumped to some conclusion because she obviously wasn't an ordinary girl. There was a dignity and nobility about her that set her apart. But it was a while before we knew each other's language well enough to communicate, and I could truly believe that I had moved through a great deal of time. Bishop, Polly asked, can you just go in and out of the time gate whenever you want to? Oh, no, he shook his head. I'm not sure how it happens when it happens. There's a feeling, just as you said, of lightning and the earth quivering, if not quaking, and something seems to happen to the air. After that first time, it has never happened. It has never again been from the root cellar, always from the star-watching rock. I go there and wait, and sometimes Annie or Corrales will come to me, but there will be weeks when nothing happens, Dr. Louise said. Thanks for the tea. I have some charts to go over. The bishop was stiff. I know it offends you, Louise. I try not to talk about it in front of you. That's not the solution either, the doctor said. That's not the solution either, the doctor said. I keep wondering what Polly's family would make of your madness. She turned to Polly. Are you going to tell them about this? Of course, but not yet. I need to understand more first, and I don't want to worry them. You may have to, the doctor said. The bishop's eyes were closed, as though he was listening. One of the stones from the can by the star-watching rock had a lovely rune on it. Hold me in peace while sleeping. Wake me with the sun smiling. With pure water slake my thirst. Let me be merry in your love. That simplicity that's gone, at least in our so-called higher civilization. Don't knock our civilization, his sister warned. Cataracts used to make people blind and still do in many parts of the world. Your lens implants have you seeing like a much younger man. That's technology, not civilization. The bishop was testy. I'm grateful every day that I can read and write. I don't underestimate knowledge. But we get into trouble when we confuse it with truth. All right, Nays. Truth is eternal. Knowledge is changeable. It is disastrous to confuse them. My dear, I don't, Dr. Louise said. But I can conceive of your adventures as having little to do with either knowledge or truth. They're beyond reason, and now, I'm afraid, they've made Kate and Alex terribly upset. I'm sorry, the bishop said. I didn't expect Polly to become involved. If I've been closed-mouthed up till now, it has been not only because of your distaste for what has been happening, but because I thought it was my own unique adventure. I never expected that Polly. I simply have to have faith that all this has meaning. Dr. Louise sighed, rose. I really do have to go over charts. Polly too stood. I'd better get on back. I promised I wouldn't be late. She drove off down the long dirt road. The tree frogs were singing their autumn farewell to summer. A few lingering insects chirred away. Above her flew a great gaggle of geese, honking their way south. Their haunting cry was new to Polly. She found it both exciting and sad. On either side of the road, bushes were red and rust-colored. There was some dry-looking goldenrod and joe pie weed. As she turned into a curve, She could see the hills, shadowed in purple, low hills weathered by centuries, comforting hills. And we'll pause there.